One sunny day, as Noah was busy mending his sandals and grumbling about the price of camel feed, a booming voice filled the air. "Noah!" it thundered. "I've got an offer you can't refuse. A free cruise." Noah blinked in disbelief. "A free cruise? What's the catch?" he asked, suspicion coloring his tone like a coat of cheap paint. God leaned in, his beard gleaming like 1,000 golden shekels. "Well, you see, Noah, I've been thinking about hitting the reset button on humanity. They've become a bit too kvetchy for my liking." Noah's eyes widened like two plump matzo balls. "You mean you're going to wipe out all of humanity?" "Oy vey, but what does that have to do with a cruise?" God chuckled, the sound echoing across the land like a particularly boisterous bar mitzvah celebration. "Ah, Noah, you're always jumping to conclusions. The cruise is for you and your family, of course. You'll be safe and sound aboard your own private ark." Noah scratched his head, trying to wrap his mind around the offer. "But Lord, why me? And how long will this cruise last?" God smiled knowingly, his eyes twinkling with divine mischief. "Well, Noah, I thought you could use a break from all that sand sweeping and camel wrangling. And as for how long it'll last, let's just say you'll have plenty of time to perfect your shuffleboard skills." As God presented his offer of a free cruise to Noah, the neurotic patriarch couldn't help but furrow his brow in confusion. "Wait a minute," he stammered, his voice tinged with incredulity. "Why me? And why do I have to build the ark? Can't you just, I don't know, snap your fingers and make it appear, like a cosmic bagel out of thin air?" God, ever patient and amused by Noah's neurotic ramblings, chuckled softly. "Oh, Noah, always with the questions. Look, I work in mysterious ways, okay? Building the ark is part of the experience. Think of it as character development." Noah shook his head, his anxiety bubbling to the surface like a pot of matzo ball soup. "Character development? Oy vey. And what's with this whole hitting the reset button business? Isn't that a bit extreme? I mean, you've been hitting that button quite a lot throughout the Bible and it never seems to end well." God shrugged, his divine shoulders rolling like thunder in the distance. "Hey, sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do. Besides, humanity could use a fresh start. Trust me, Noah, it'll be fine." But Noah wasn't convinced. His skepticism kicked into overdrive. "Fine, fine. Have you seen the state of this desert lately? And don't even get me started on the locusts. I tell you, hitting the reset button isn't the most sensible way of dealing with problems. Maybe you should try therapy instead." God chuckled once more, his laughter echoing across the sands. "Noah, Noah, Noah, you worry too much. Just focus on building that ark and everything will work out in the end. Trust me." And so, with a sigh and a shrug, Noah reluctantly set to work on his ark, his neurotic tendencies casting a shadow over the desert landscape. But deep down, he couldn't shake the feeling that hitting the reset button might not be the best solution after all. As Noah continued to kvetch about the task ahead, his complaints echoed through the heavens like the sound of 1,000 grumbling stomachs. His bickering about the 120-year timeline and the voluntary nature of the work filled the air like the scent of burnt latkes on Hanukkah. God, weary of Noah's incessant demands, appeared before him in a shimmering cloud of cosmic dust. "Noah!" he boomed in a voice that rumbled like thunder. "Enough with the kvetching already! This is a divine assignment, not a negotiation." Noah, undeterred by God's stern words, continued to argue his case. "But God," he protested, "this career path isn't what my parents had hoped for. And 120 years? I could have written the Torah twice over in that time." God, unimpressed by Noah's complaints, shook his head in exasperation. "Noah, you're promoted to senior project manager," he declared, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "But don't let it go to your head. It just means you're the only one working on the project." And so, with a sigh and a shrug, Noah reluctantly accepted his fate as the lone worker on the Ark project, knowing that sometimes even divine promotions come with a hefty dose of irony. About 120 years later, the Ark stood proudly, a testament to Noah's perseverance and, let's face it, his sheer stubbornness. Noah, exhausted from years of back-breaking labor, couldn't bear to look at the Ark any longer. It loomed over him like a monument to his misery, a constant reminder of God's relentless plan. As the rain began to fall, Noah's weariness turned to frustration. "This will take forever," he muttered to himself, watching as the drops pattered against the Ark's wooden hull. God appeared before Noah with a sheepish smile. "Sorry about that, Noah," he said, his voice tinged with apology. "I guess eternity has a negative impact on your sense of time." Noah rolled his eyes, his patience wearing thin. "Tell me about it," he grumbled. And speaking of timing, remember that time I accidentally spilled the beans about your plan? I still can't believe I got denied a tab at the hardware store. God chuckled softly, his laughter echoing across the floodwaters. Ah, yes, good times, he replied, shaking his head in amusement. You know, Noah, you're not the only one who struggles with timing. Every time people pray for something really important, I'm usually a couple of centuries late for that. Noah raised an eyebrow, intrigued despite himself. Like what? He asked, curiosity getting the better of him. God's smile turned wistful as he recounted the tale. Well, there was this little boy whose canary died, he began. By the time I made it to bring the canary back to life, it had already gotten its canary funeral. Oh, the irony. As Noah listened to God's story, his curiosity piqued. But why do you keep destroying and recreating the world? He asked, his voice tinged with wonder. God chuckled softly, his eyes twinkling with divine mischief. Imagine everything is made of Play-Doh, he explained. Once in a while you knead it into a ball, then you want it to expand, so you give it to your toddler, who will assure that it will be spread all through the house. Noah nodded, beginning to understand. So it's like starting over with a clean slate? Exactly, God replied, nodding in agreement. You see, my wife gets bored easily. After a while she wants to look at something new, so everything is returned to the Play-Doh ball state and again spread all through the house. Noah couldn't help but chuckle at the analogy. But is the world ever created perfectly? He asked, his curiosity getting the better of him. God shook his head, a wry smile playing on his lips. Last time, the earth was disc-shaped, and people kept falling off the edge. My wife complained about me spending too much time creating new humans to compensate for those who fell off the edge. And don't get me started on the water bill. Those oceans were literally flowing off the edges. And what about the afterlife? Noah pressed, eager to learn more. God's expression turned solemn. It's a bit overrated, to be honest, he admitted. I'm a busy guy, so I didn't have much time for this heaven thing. I managed to build a small playground out of bits and pieces I had left over from creating the universe, but it doesn't seem to suffice. Most souls get tired after a while and decide to go stay with my brother-in-law. Every now and then, I get postcards from souls who prefer the torment in hell over standing in line for the swing. And so, as the rain continued to fall and the ark bobbed on the waves, Noah couldn't help but chuckle at the absurdity of it all. After all, when you're stuck in the middle of a divine disaster, sometimes all you can do is laugh and hope for the best. As the water rose around the ark, Noah scratched his head in confusion. What's the deal with God's plan? He mumbled to himself. I mean, wouldn't it be easier to just drop anchor and wait it out? Then I wouldn't have to deal with all this traveling once the rain stops. But before Noah could put his plan into action, God's booming voice filled the air, shaking the very timbers of the ark. Noah, he thundered, his divine fury evident. If I wanted you to stay put, I would have commanded you to build a replica of the Tower of Babel, just without the fatal design flaw in section 23D. Now sail away. As Noah sailed across the vast expanse of water, his weary eyes scanned the horizon, pondering the mysteries of the sea. What about all the seagulls and other creatures that didn't make it onto the ark? He mused aloud. I mean, wouldn't they be in the same boat, so to speak? Just then, a massive sea dragon breached the surface, its scales gleaming in the sunlight. Noah pointed at the creature, his brow furrowed in confusion. What's the logic of that? He wondered aloud, gesturing toward the beast with a mix of awe and bewilderment. But before Noah could contemplate the enigma of the sea dragon any further, a brimstone plummeted from the sky, striking the creature with a resounding thud. Noah blinked in disbelief, his neuroses kicking into overdrive. What sea dragon? I don't see any. God's voice echoed across the waves, his divine presence hovering invisibly above the ark. Noah's eyes widened in realization, his anxiety momentarily forgotten in the face of divine intervention. Right, Noah muttered, shaking his head in disbelief. Just another day on the ark, I suppose. And with that, he turned his attention back to the task at hand, knowing that when it came to God's ways, sometimes it was best not to ask too many questions. Noah, God said, shaking his head, you're making it worse for yourself with all this kvetching? Noah, with a Woody Allen-esque furrowed brow, responded incredulously. Worse? How could this possibly be worse? I'm shoveling dung while lions roam the ship. It's a mishigas. And don't get me started on my allergies. Dog, cat, grass, you name it. I'm allergic to everything from here to Jerusalem. If you don't stop this kvetching, God continued, you'll end up like Jonah. With a sigh that could have rivaled the windstorm outside, Noah replied, "Do it. Despite my fish allergy, this is fine. Just get me out of this place, back to dry land." God chuckled softly, his voice like thunder in the distance. "Oh, Noah, you haven't seen anything yet. You think this is bad?" he teased. "Did you remember to build a bathroom? I think not." Noah's anxiety skyrocketed. "A bathroom? Oi, Gewalt! I completely forgot. How am I supposed to survive on this ark without a proper bathroom? This is a disaster. I need to see my therapist." Noah's face fell. "My therapist? You wiped him out along with everyone else. Now the only option is seeing a parrot, and he's not very good at listening, but at least he works for peanuts." But before Noah could protest further, God vanished in a puff of kosher smoke, leaving Noah to ponder the depths of his misfortune. Truly, it seemed, there was no escape from his fate aboard this verkackte nightmare cruise. But, alas, Noah's cruise turned out to be anything but relaxing. You see, instead of sipping pina coladas on the deck, Noah found himself knee-deep in dung, shoveling away like a schlemiel. And to make matters worse, there were lions roaming the ship, looking for their next meal. Noah spent most of his days hiding from the ferocious beasts, peeking out from behind barrels of pickles and loaves of challah. Every now and then, he'd muster up the courage to threaten the lions, telling them that if they misbehaved, he'd turn them into a streimel faster than you could say oy vey. But despite his best efforts, Noah couldn't seem to catch a break. The lions continued to roam the ship, leaving Noah to wonder if he'd ever see dry land again. And as the days turned into weeks, Noah couldn't help but think that maybe, just maybe, he should have stayed home and watched reruns of Fiddler on the Roof instead. Truly, it seemed, there was still no escape from his fate aboard this verkackte nightmare cruise. Noah sighed as he watched the dove soar into the horizon. "If I had a duck, I would have sent a duck," he muttered to himself, adjusting his glasses. But with these hungry lions lurking about, options are as limited as a New York deli at closing time. As the dove returned with a beak full of seaweed, Noah's annoyance reached new heights. "Seaweed? Really?" he exclaimed, waving his arms in frustration. "I might as well be stranded on a sushi roll." To add insult to injury, the dove, perhaps sensing Noah's exasperation, chose that moment to relieve itself on Noah's shoulder. "Of course," Noah muttered, wiping the mess away with a grimace. "Just when I thought this couldn't get any worse." But then, as if the universe had decided to throw him a bone, the water began to recede, revealing dry land beneath. "Was in der Welt," Noah exclaimed, echoing the sentiments of everyone on the ark. In the chaos of the moment, Noah managed to wrangle 2 well-fed lions and a resentful dove onto the safety of the newly revealed land. As he stood there, panting and disheveled, he couldn't help but feel a sense of accomplishment tinged with relief. "Okay, God," Noah said, wiping his brow with a shaky hand. "We'll call this fiasco a success of biblical proportions. But let's make a deal. No one will ever know about the dinosaurs, trolls, unicorns, and all the other creatures that got eaten by those ravenous lions, agreed?" God chuckled softly, the sound carrying across the waters like a gentle breeze. "Agreed, Noah," he replied, his voice warm with understanding. "Some things are better left unsaid, but if you tell on me then—" God trailed off, his voice taking on a mischievous tone. Noah's eyes widened in realization, his neuroses tingling with apprehension. "Would I ever tell on you?" he repeated, a nervous laugh escaping his lips. "Oh, I wouldn't dream of it, God. Cross my heart and hope to be spared from another flood." God's laughter filled the air. "Good," he said, his tone playful yet firm. "After all, a little divine secrecy never hurt anyone. Now go forth and multiply, Noah, and try not to kvetch too much along the way." With a weary sigh and a resigned shrug, Noah watched as the waters receded, revealing dry land beneath the ark. As the vessel settled on solid ground, Noah couldn't help but feel a surge of irritation coursing through him. After all the years of toil, this verkackte cruise and being stranded with the ark was the last thing he needed. And so, with the memory of dinosaurs, trolls, and unicorns lost to the depths of history, Noah settled into a new chapter of his life, feeling more exasperated than ever. He realized that sometimes it was best to leave the greatest mysteries unexplored and simply find solace in the familiar tales, like those of Fiddler on the Roof, as he sought to move beyond the challenges he had endured.